in the plans. Not be waiting for the team. When he comes, we'll say hello. So for now, let me just decide because this was where it was ending yesterday. So I'm used to this. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second day for a call for Mizan, Islam and Climate Responsibility. We're very excited to have you join us. So my name is Khalid, and I'm a research fellow at the College of Islamic Studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University. And yes, just to refresh your memory about what a Mizan is, it's a covenant for Earth that seeks to divide to bridge the divide. Definitely not divide the bridge. Okay. To bridge the divide between religiosity and sustainability, providing guidance on the ways through which Muslims can reignite environmental activism from the Islamic tradition. Over the next couple of days, with our esteemed group of experts, we're going to learn more, or sorry, we had our day yesterday, so the remaining of the 2 days today, we're going to learn more about it and how we can reach sustainability from an Islamic perspective. And our wonderful dean is here now. So we'll be having 2 panel discussions today, one about general climate policies and institutions, and the other about Mizan, its applicability and Islamic basis. Our wonderful moderator for both sessions will be Dr. Evren, Associate Professor of Islamic Global Affairs at the College of Islamic Studies and Assistant Dean of Innovation and Community Engagement. Long title, mashallah. So before I introduce you to the panelists and we begin the sessions, we actually have a short recitation, Quran recitation by Brother Usama.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ذواتا أفنان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان تجريان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم.
So now we're going to have a few welcoming remarks from Dr. Recep Senturk and Dr. Evren and Dr. Fazlun Khalid, respectively. So if our wonderful dean can come up here and give his welcoming remarks, that would be great. Or, yep, we're there.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا وحبيبنا وتوبي قلوبنا وشفي ذنوبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. I am Recep Senturk. I am the new Dean of College of Islamic Studies. I just came here a month ago. Alhamdulillah, I'm very happy here with my nice colleagues. You know, they have been my friends for a long time anyway. I welcome you to this event, which is titled Call for Mizan, Islam and Climate Responsibility. We have many responsibilities. They remind us about a new responsibility, which is our responsibility towards the climate responsibility. So this event is very timely to increase awareness about climate and environment, because we are facing many risks today. Even the future of globe is at risk. This panel is calling us to take responsibility to save the earth, to save the globe by environmental activism grounded in Islamic tradition. Today, the whole world, the whole globe is at risk. Why? Because the balance in the order, in the natural order, in the environmental order is lost. Because Allah Ta'ala created the earth with al-Mizan. وَوَضَعَ al-Mizan. He established the balance. And the balance is based on al-Adala, justice. So justice is the essence of al-Mizan, the balance. But this balance is now lost. Who brought the earth to the edge of demise? Who brought the earth to the edge of complete collapse? This modernist, extremist, capitalist ideology. This ideology is responsible for disrupting the balance on the earth, which had been in place from the beginning of time. And because of this balance, there was a sustainable order, and the earth continued its life without any problem. But this materialist, capitalist, modernist ideology, now we have postmodernist ideology, which is the same thing, just a different upgraded version of it. So it is what brought Earth to the edge of demise and complete collapse, because there is no Mizan, there is no balance in these ideologies, because they are extremist ideologies. So extremist modernity and postmodernity disrupted the primordial natural balance on in the earth, and this balance has been preserved by religions from the beginning of history, because the essence of every religion is balance, is justice, and they treated nature, environment as stewards. They saw nature as a book. This is what I call semiotics of nature, because in nature, the function of everything is first semiotical. The second function is to serve humanity and other creatures. But the first function is semiotical, which means that they stand for a meaning. They show something beyond them. This is the meaning of al-ayah. Al-ayah. And also the whole world is al-alam. That means the sign, the sign with capital S, and showing its creator, directing the attention of people to its creator. And everything in existence has a semiotic function, because everything stands for its maker. Like this pen stands for its maker. As soon as you see this pen, you realize there's a maker. Like this building, stands for its architect, right? So this world also stands for its maker, who is Allah Ta'ala, and every small thing from the subatomic world to the macrocosm stands for its maker, Allah Ta'ala. So this semiotic approach to nature assigned meaning to nature. And the relationship of people with nature and environment was a meaningful relationship. They saw nature as a book to read. So this meaningful relationship with nature was destroyed by modern perspective, which related to nature just to control, just to exercise power on nature and defeat nature and exploit nature. So the whole relationship is changed. Now our job is to recharge nature with meaning, recharge every object with meaning, recharge the world with meaning. So make the world al-alam, the sign, and make every object in nature the ayah, standing, for its maker. And I believe this kind of meaningful relationship between man, humanity, and environment and nature will be the new foundation for environmental ethics. Now, our relationship with environment is not ethical. It's a capitalistic, exploitative, conflictual relationship. We need to make it an ethical relationship. And this ethical relationship requires grounding our relationship with nature as well as with everything else in religion. Because modern science cannot provide this kind of ethical ground to revolutionize, to reshape, to reconfigure our relationship with environment and nature. So those modernists, they destroyed the environment and nature. Now they are calling back religious people to set up the balance again, to realign it. And it's our duty, it's our religious duty, ibadah, because we are Khalifa on earth. This earth is a trust, given to us, so that we make i'mar of it. We put life in it, inshallah ta'ala. So the opposite of Mizan is imbalance. So modern life, postmodern life is characterized by imbalance. Imbalance in everything. Imbalance in the inner life, imbalance in the economic life, imbalance in political life, imbalance in almost everything. So Mizan is the universal principle of the whole world in everything, in our inner life, in our social life, and also the whole world. And imbalance is based on reductionism and extremism. So this materialist extremism, leads to imbalance in life. Or if you have the spiritual extremism, it also causes imbalance. Okay, so Islam brings these opposite things together in maratib. In maratib, like maratib al-wujud, maratib al-ulum, maratib al-ahkam. This is what I translate as multiplex worldview. Multiplex worldview, multiplex means something that has multiple layers. I mean, of course, we benefit from from nature, but we don't exploit. We don't have a conflictual relationship with nature. This multiplex worldview, multiplexity in our understanding of what exists, and multiplexity in our understanding what are the types of knowledge we can use, and multiplexity in studying nature, the methods that we use in studying nature. I don't want to go into details of it, through balance. For instance, let me give an example. What's a rose? From a botanic perspective, rose is a plant. That's it. See what I mean? But from a semiotic perspective, rose is a symbol, symbol of first an ayah for the existence of Allah Ta'ala, showing the manifestation, the divine manifestation, al-Khaliq, al-Jameel. But at the same time, socially, some meanings are attributed to rose. Like Sheikh may be taking rose to his wife, right?
Yes, I do.
If it's ordinary plant, then he wouldn't do this. See what I mean? But there's a meaning involved, like indicating love, affection, right? So botanics is not enough to study nature. You need a additional semiotic perspective. So it's what I call multiplexity. You know, we are not excluding the natural science perspective, the causal perspective. It should be there, but we need to add a semiotic perspective on top of it, inshallah ta'ala. And epistemic sustainability is the foundation of environmental sustainability. You know, this epistemic sustainability, which is our worldview, based on this multiplex understanding. If we lose this, then we have no foundation for environmental ethics to make environment sustainable. So we should always focus on the epistemic sustainability. And as Muslims, we accept reason as a source of knowledge, sense perception as a source of knowledge, but at the same time, divine revelation as a source of knowledge. So this multiplex epistemology, this is the epistemic foundation of Islamic civilization, Islamic society, and also Islamic approach to nature. So this epistemic sustainability is very crucial to sustain our civilization, culture, economy, politics, and everything. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I would like to thank Dr. Enver Tok, from our college, College of Islamic Studies, for organizing this event. This is what Islam is about. Islam is about everything in your life. Islam must touch your inner world and outer world, from the most micro to the most macro, from the most inner, most external issues. So I'm very happy that they are showing that we as Muslims are concerned about whole globe, about environment, about all human problems. I also thank Sayyida Fatima Al-Khulaifi from Quranic Botanic Garden. It's a very nice, very authentic place, perhaps unique in the whole world. It's a very interesting idea in Qatar, but it should be introduced more to the whole world. And also the whole Mizan team and my team in the College of Islamic Studies. And I invite all of you to join this Covenant for Earth, Al-Mizan. Thank you for your attention.
So much, Doctor. Now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Evren to give a small presentation. Oh, I need to just share it.
Very quick presentation. I assume that it would be a nice segue between our opening remarks and also to our keynote speech by Dr. Fazlun Khalid. And immediately after, I promise it's going to be only 2-3 minutes. So, and immediately after that, we'll start with our first panel with our esteemed participants. So in the past, if we include today, in the past 2 days, we are talking about, especially yesterday, through some of the trainings that Dr. Ode mentioned, some questions, right? We dealt with them. We tried to explore these questions. One of the questions was, what does Mizan mean to each of us, right? Because it doesn't mean the same thing for all of us. So there is so much variation. And as our being Dr. Recep mentioned, there's multiplexity that's at play, and it needs to be really understood. So I told you yesterday that it took me some time in my career to really absorb and come up with the layer of thinking that enables me to have a better connection between the core of what we do, the value-based realm, and also how it affects academic and post-related work. So I'm not sure if this is the right starting point. At the core of everything. So I feel that at least for me, for any person, I think it's unlimited number of things that are in balance. So to me, I will just very briefly go over a few things that are really critical to me to find out the balance that helped me to come up with where I am today, and one of the reasons why we are having this amazing experience for 2 days is because of our connection and introduction to professors like Dr. Iyad, Dr. Ibrahim, and all the Mizan colleagues. So I started with my career in economics, and in economics, often we start with the states and markets relationship, like what states do or don't do, and what markets respond, or how can markets sometimes become powerful, start to hegemonize over the states through liberalism, privatization, commercialization, so on and so forth. So this was my formation. It really gave me how markets and states work, but something was missing. So one day, many years ago, one day I was a bit lucky because always the research topics come to me. So I don't know why it's a coincidence or another reason, but they come to me. One day I opened the newspaper. I was in Turkey, and it was year 2000, and there was a big financial crisis, economic crisis happening in Turkey. And Turkish lira lost half of its value overnight. The bankings were shut down. People were getting laid off, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, Argentina was having a big financial crisis. Very similar times, and people were comparing all these countries. So I opened the newspaper, it's Turkish newspaper, and there was something written in English, and I tried to make sense of it. It was like, "Don't cry for me, Argentina." So I kept thinking, what? It's a famous song, right? "Don't cry for me, Argentina." But why a Turkish newspaper would use this in their headline? So it kind of kept me thinking. And when I read the article, it was talking about why in Argentina people are on the streets, demonstrations, vandalisms, like all big social unrest, explosions. But in Turkey, yes, there is a bit of discontent, but things are a bit okay. So it led me to inquire about why in one society a similar crisis happening, but people on the streets, and the other one relatively easier. And I found one answer in the issue of informality, the role of informal economy as a mechanism of mediation and mitigation between the crisis and the well-being, and how in Turkey, with the large, really buoyant informal economy, help people to find jobs that are outside of the economy. This was my master's. And then after that, I started looking at the culture, how culture really affects economic behavior. So that was my other part. Still, I was searching. This was pretty much my PhD thesis was about embeddedness. And then I started to inquire about individual behavior, because states and markets, community, prices, informality, and culture all have effect. But what about individual behavior? What shapes it, right? The embeddedness. So, and then this was pretty much my formation. And then one day I saw a commercial of a company, and it kept me thinking. So before I had seen this commercial, I would say this is a form of commercialization. It's because people are literate and everything. So this is the commercial. So what I saw here is the real. I'm disguising the name of the company, which I will reveal. This is everywhere. It's not a big deal. So what did I think of when I saw this? That was really quite striking to me. In the past, if I had seen this, I would say, "Oh, people are littering. This is pollution, and it's a company trying to market itself." But there's an indirect message. Does anybody know what this is all about, by the way? What could it be? For what company could it be? So the company here is Chupa Chups, and they are trying to prove to their customers that their candies are sugar-free, and the ends are not really touching it. So in the past, I wouldn't do it, but this made sense to me because I was able to relate it to Surat al-Elamin and the whole story of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he stopped the entire army for one end. It was the connection between an individual human and the nature, that connection. So I had a whole presentation about this, by the way, for the sake of time, I'm stopping here. But this is a good example of how we can rebuild our relation with nature, that the nature is giving us some important insights that we should really listen. So thanks again. all the presenters, all the colleagues for being here and your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Evren. And now to conclude our welcoming remarks, we have Dr. Fazlun Khalid joining us online. And he's part of the Chair Scholars drafting team of the Mizan project, founder of the Islamic Foundation for Ecology and Environmental Sciences, and author of Science on Earth, Islam, Modernity, and the Climate Crisis. I'm just going to unmute him, and then he can begin. You can unmute yourself now, I think. And you can begin.
Can I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Now?
Yes, you can go ahead. You can start. We can hear you.
Can hear me and see me. Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Firstly, my thanks are due to Dr. Evren for honoring me with this invitation. And I'm very pleased to be with you on this occasion when you're exploring the whys and wherefores of climate change and the potentiality of the Al-Mizan project that we are all involved in. And also like to thank Dr. Evren for giving me some indications as to the kind of topics that you would like me to cover. And he's given me 3 indications about what I need to cover, and I'll try and speak to the brief that he has given me, inshallah. So I'm going to divide this into 3 parts. Firstly, how can balance Mizan, the relationship between humans and nature? And the other one is how can we reduce the ecological footprint? And thirdly, how can we move from knowing and doing sustainability to becoming sustainable in our everyday lives? For the first part of this 3-part talk I'm going to give you is about a case study. I think I'll start with this and give you a reflection of the kind of work that we've been doing over the past years. And about this, in fact, accentuates the value of approaching this whole business from an Islamic perspective. I had to go back a few years to do this because we've been on the ground floor of this work for nearly 40 years, and evolving and developing an Islamic approach to this whole business. And to begin with, I like to also examine 1 or 2 terms that we use. And one of this is frequently as well here is what is environmentalism? And in my view, environmentalism was a new term, relatively new term, that came into existence only after Rachel Carson, in her book Silent Spring, documented the effect of human behavior on the environment, which came out. Her book came out in 1962, and the whole environmental ethos emerged out of that. And before that, if you go to any university, it was not known for universities to have degrees on ecology, climate change, environment. It only emerged in the 70s and 80s. In 1999, I was developing, through the work of my organization, a Quranic template of how we can educate people to understand and, in fact, express their situation in terms of an Islamic understanding from the Quran. And I produced a booklet called Quran, Creation and Conservation. At the same time, I was putting this template together. There was a problem in East Africa, particularly in Zanzibar, where the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, and other organizations, including Conservation International, were trying to persuade Zanzibari fishermen to stop dynamiting coral reefs. What they used to do, and this problem may be familiar to you, some fishermen for ease of access, instead of wasting time doing the traditional things and fishing the way that they've always fished, threw explosives into the water, and by this means they were able to collect a lot of fish in a very short space of time. But what this did was to destroy the breeding grounds of the fish, destroy the coral. And WWF and other international organizations working in Zanzibar under the auspices of the Zanzibari government couldn't stop the fishermen from doing this. So somebody had the idea, or because Zanzibar is nearly 100% Muslim, somebody had the idea, why not try an Islamic approach to this? So I got a telephone call from WWF, and they told me the problem. And I said, I'm just testing a teaching resource, and it hasn't I haven't actually been to a real life situation. I'm willing to come over. So the upshot of this was WWF paid my airfare, and I went all the way to Zanzibar. And in fact, the second island of Zanzibar is two islands. One is Unguja, and the second one is Pemba. And Pemba is a smaller island north of Unguja, North Zanzibar. And I went there by plane and got there. And what was happening, I discovered that there were lots of small islands, and one particular island was called Misali. Misali was supposed to be, in the local tradition, a sacred island where a teacher used it as a masala. That's how Misali came into being. And this was the fishermen's camp. And what they were doing were to go camping in this place and then dynamiting the coral reefs and getting them. So what happened? To cut a long story short, I conducted this workshop for 48 hours, 2-day workshop, based on the Quran and broken up into 4 parts. The first one was on Tawheed, where I used Surah Ikhlas. Second one on Fitra, based on Ayah 30:30, Fitratullahi allati fatara nasi alayh, la tabdila khalqillah, ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. And the third one was, I call, the responsibility principle, which was based on Al-Mizan, the ayat which we have been discussing just now. And fourth one was, we call, the responsibility principle. So there were four main structures to this, which is the unity principle, the principle of the fitra, the primordiality of creation, the principle of Mizan, and the principle of responsibility. What happened was, the end of the 48 hours, something quite deeply profound happened. When a fisherman's leader came up to me, this workshop was consisted of about 25 people, 26 people, consisted of the fishermen, the leaders of the fishing community, the local government, and the media, and also the local mufti. The fisherman's leader came up to me and said, Brother Khalid, we can break the laws of the government, but we cannot break Allah's laws. So what happened was, this profound but simple teaching. I didn't stand up. I wasn't pedagogic. I didn't give them a lecture. What I did was to feed them the ayat of Quran and ask them to discuss it and relate it to the situation they found themselves. So it was they were given the opportunity to explore these verses in the real situation that they were faced in. And you know what? Within 48 hours, they stopped We were able to do in 2 days what the major institutions, what the major NGOs couldn't do in 3-4 years. So what happened then was we created a harem zone, a 2,000 square kilometer harem zone where the fishermen protected the environment and they self-managed it, you see. But to bring this up to date, and this is a reflection of the kind of society that we're living in, the kind of systemic relationship that we have with the major organizations, in that the Zanzibar government decided that they wanted to develop, you see the whole word about developed, apply the capitalist model, and this project was absorbed into a wider World Bank supported event. So there are lots of lessons to learn from this about what Islam can do to change the situation, and also for us to consider the wider social structures and the systemic position that we are faced in terms of the structures and the economic model that we have been following for the past 200-300 years. So my conclusion from this is that environmentalism, if we want to call it that, is deeply embedded in the matrix of Islam. And I have come to the conclusion after 30-40 years of work that, quite simply, if you follow the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and follow his behavior, you are an environmentalist, if you want to call it that. Because there was no environmentalism 100 years ago. An ism was created because we created a problem. We create a problem and we create an ism to deal with that problem. So at the simplest level, it is about good manners. It is about personal behavior and how it manifests itself in our relationships with others and other sentient beings and with the natural world. That's how we relate to our neighbors and other creatures and nature itself. Now, when I say nature itself, I have to qualify that by saying everything is nature. We are nature. How we did that, we have detached ourselves from looking at nature as something else. Nature is the source of our existence. So we have changed the sources of life to resources of plunder. That's the challenge we have to face. So sources of life have become resources for us in our consumerism. The exemplar is Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and it grew from the foundations he established into a range of rules and institutions that manifested an expression of life in a way that was truly holistic. This holistic expression is integrated into the Islamic worldview and is encapsulated in the verses that in Quran, Surah 51, 2021, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. There are signs on the earth for people with certainty, and in yourselves as well. Do you not then see? Signs on the earth. The term signs, ayat, in the Quran describes the natural world, which scholars refer to as the natural Quran. So the book of Allah's creation is the natural world itself. That includes us. The earth is the Quran of Allah's creation, and the signs in the self, which are both inwardly and outwardly manifest, is a reflection of how we relate to his creation. The Al-Mizan project is a manifestation of this ethos. And moving on to the second point that Dr. Evren wanted me to address, it is how can we reduce our ecological footprint and walk lightly on the earth? What does Al-Mizan tell us, and what can be learned? See? And Al-Mizan is the culmination of the kind of the work that we have been doing. And I don't want to tread on the toes of the other scholars who will be talking about this, and Dr. Iyad and Dr. Ibrahim. So I'll just say, being the chairman of the Al-Mizan Covenant project has been a great honor for me, and I myself have learned an enormous amount of material. It's all there for us. But what I really want to address now is the first point of that item that Evren wanted me to address, and how can we reduce our ecological footprint and walk lightly on the earth. In this regard, I would like to refer you to the website of the Global Footprint Network. If you don't know about it, if you know about it, alhamdulillah, but if you don't, please go to the Global Footprint Network website. Now, I have been following this for a number of years, and the current update on this is by July 28, 2022, this year, we have consumed, our global footprint has been so heavy, by July 28th of this year, we have consumed 12 months worth of resources. So in 7 months, we have consumed globally, our global footprint has had the effect of denuding the earth in 7 months of what we could have had, what we should have had in 12 months. Last year, it was the 29th of July. So the thing is, it's receding every year. Every year we consume more and more and more, and we reduce the earth resources which future generations cannot have. Now, my further research has showed me that the year in which there was equilibrium, and by that I mean what the natural world has to offer the human race and what the human race could have taken from this, that year was supposed to be 1971. That was the day, the time of equilibrium. And currently, we are now consuming 1 3/4 planetary resources. That is the nature of our footprint. And this is my own arithmetic, and people who want to go to this website and work out this arithmetic, that if we continue to recede, 1 day every year, by the year in about 220 to 250 years' time, a rough arithmetic, is the time in which we will have reduced the planet to a total desert. That will be the time when your great-great-grandchildren will be born and possibly living, if it was possible to do so. If we come through the next 100 years, it'll take us that amount of time to reduce. So this is the global footprint. This is what we are leaving behind for future generations. So watch it, be careful. Where do we go from here? And moving on to the third and final point that Dr. Evren wanted me to address, how can we move from knowing and doing sustainability to become sustainable in our everyday lives and being? Now, again, I have a problem with jargon. Like environmentalism, sustainability is another term that has really not quite grabbed me. I don't understand. Right from the very beginning, sustainability, the term sustainable development emerged out of the Brundtland report, which came out about, I forgot the date, sorry, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It came from the Brundtland report. You may wish to note that. Again, it's available on the website. So sustainable development is a good idea, said Brundtland. And what is development? What are we sustaining? Are we sustaining the earth? Have we not been told that we are consuming 12 months resources in 7 months? How can that be sustaining? You see, and what is this process that we are sustaining? I maintain that the whole economic agenda, which the previous speaker described as capitalism, is about growth and development. We all want to grow. The problem with the COP process, the climate change process, the COP 15, 25, 26, now 27 in Cairo, the process is that when all the global leaders come together to discuss climate change, what we hear about is the scientific arguments. What we don't hear is the economic arguments. because every single nation state that's participating in the climate change process want to grow. They want to grow their economic agenda. That is the system. That is what we are a part of. We cannot grow. As we know, we are being told we cannot grow. We are over-consuming. So this process is linear. Growth in only one direction. But I have lived, I won't tell you how long I have lived in case that worries you. Uh, I have long enough to know that linearity is not the way that we should be going, because the whole global process, the nature, the natural world is circular. It's not linear. It's circular. But the growth model, the developmental model, is linear. There's a fundamental contradiction here. You see, and that is based on the consumer model. And when I talk about the consumer model, it is also a minority of people on the planet, the developed countries, the countries that have the resources, who are a minority, are overconsumed. So the majority country, the poor people living in Bangladesh or the islands of the Pacific Ocean, are going underwater. So our model has an effect on the global system, and the global system is being tampered with by a minority of people who want bigger, better, and bigger consumeristic lifestyles. We cannot have that. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of my time, and I would like to introduce another idea. People now we talk about climate change, but the United Nations system has defined three major issues. Climate change is one, the loss of biodiversity is the other, and pollution is the third. But I'll just introduce the idea of what is biodiversity. You see, biodiversity, although not described in the Quran as such, biodiversity is quite manifest in the Quran. Allah says in the Quran that the animals that walk and crawl and on 4 feet and the animals that fly are all part of our creation, and they are communities like you. And that is biodiversity. But because it's not described, so we are coming into the academic world and say, okay, fine, let's do biodiversity. This is it. But the point I want to make here is that what preceded biodiversity is the loss of cultural diversity. Cultural diversity was destroyed in the past 4 or 5 years, 400 or 500 years of history. Cultural diversity was destroyed and replaced by another systemic model. And that is what you have to explore. That is what I try to put across in my book. So here we go. Maybe, I hope, I'm doing it this way because I wanted to challenge you. This is the way it can be done. We need to talk. We need to talk to each other. It's honest language of what is really going on, and how can we go on from here in order to focus on promoting the Al Mizan project that we are taking a lot of pains to produce. Inshallah, it'll come to fruition in the next 5 or 6 months. So if you have any questions, in your hands. Bismillah. I can't hear you.
No.
But I can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry about that. technical issues. Anyway, so I was saying thank you, Dr. Fazlun, and I was thanking Dr. Evren and Dr. Recep as well for welcoming speeches and announcing that we'll be starting our first panel discussion. So I wanted to introduce our panelists for today, who are all sitting right over here in front of you all. Firstly, we have Dr. Gonzalo Castro de la Mata, who is an oncologist and the executive director of Earthna Center for Sustainable Development. Next time we have Ms. Hend Zainel, who is the executive director of strategy, partnerships, and management at Qatar Foundation's Higher Education Division. And Mr. Darwish Ahmed Shebani, Secretary General of Global Public Diplomacy Network. And finally, we have Dr. Mustafa Elamin, Professor of Islam and Global Affairs and former Foreign Minister of Sudan. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much, Bayan. Maybe it's easier to speak with the microphone to prevent any back problems. So we have a little bit of change in the structure because we were planning to go question by question, but for the sake of time and management of our time, to have a Mizan in our time, so I will first share with you the questions that we kindly shared earlier with the panelists. And there are four main questions. The first one is, so I will list all the questions and I will kindly expect each panelist to respond separately one by one. And we'll start with Dr. Gonzalo. And the first question is, if you can please share one anecdote that affected you immensely in your past and caused a deep interest on issues related to environment, nature, or climate, what would it be? And then, as you know, COP27 has this hashtag just and ambitious. So just and ambitious, from your point of view, this hashtag, how can it be translated into action? And what does it mean at a global level? The next question is, balancing human and nature interaction is one of the core tenets of the Mizan process. And can you please name one or two best practices as a project or initiative that stand out in your perspective in guiding humanity to seek for balance? And finally, how do you see the future of the current climate crisis we are living? And Mizan is an attempt to understand the crisis. But in your opinion, what are the social, economic, political, or other types of changes or transformations needed to support and Mizan or similar initiatives to better respond to the crisis? Of course, each question is like a PhD thesis, I know. And please feel free to respond the way you like, the way you enjoy, and the way you want to reflect. We are so honored to have you all. Thank you so much. We are starting with Dr. Gonzalo, and after the session, he has a commitment and he will be stepping out. Any questions for Dr. Gonzalo? We have some of the colleagues from the Earthna team you can raise later, and then Ms. Hend, then Mr. Darwish, and then Dr. Mustafa will be finalizing the session. Dr. Gonzalo, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tor, and thanks everybody. And first of all, my apologies. And what happens is that there is a leak in my apartment, and the engineer is ready to get in, and they want her to open the door, otherwise there's going to be a problem in the whole building. So that's not going to be on Mizan or anything like it. Okay, thank you. First of all, as Dr. Tor mentioned, Earthna was created early this year by the Qatar Foundation to make use of the great ecosystem of. And if you prefer the
It's up to you.
I think you can use the mic.
Give it the mic.
Easier than
Thank you. But so I was saying, Earthna was created early this year, and yesterday Ruba made a presentation, and I think that everybody was very pleased with that. So I'm not going to talk much about Earthna, but I will try to address the questions posed to us The first one about the anecdotes that caused a deep interest. And I remember this very vividly because I was in primary school, and in one science book, there was a summary of a book that just came out by Paul Ehrlich. The book was The Population Book. And in this book, Paul Ehrlich said that human population was growing very fast, and the resources were not growing fast enough, that agriculture was not going to keep up. And he predicted that there would be hundreds of millions of people that would die in the mid-1970s. Now, of course, this didn't happen because the agricultural revolution was also going on in parallel. And we were able, as humanity, to produce much more food on less land. So this neo-Malthusian that Ehrlich proposed really caused a great impact on me, perhaps because in the book there were lots of graphs, and it was very clear that how the resources that we were using, the population was growing exponentially, but not the resources. But at any rate, if we fix that problem, it doesn't mean that we can fix all of the problems. And I think that's exactly what we're facing. So on the one hand, we have humanity that grows and uses more resources in a manner that is exceeding the capacity of the planet to replenish these resources. So the second question is regarding the ambition in COP27 and the hashtag just and ambitious. If we start with ambitious, we have a big problem, because at the Paris Agreement, we need to limit emissions in order to reach at the most 1.5 degrees of global warming. That Paris Agreement is based on voluntary contributions to these emissions reductions. These are called the national determined contributions. We add up all of the national determined contributions, the pledges that countries have made today, then they're not ambitious enough. We're not going to make it to 1.5 degrees. We're probably going to make it to 3 degrees. And when we look at the trajectories of the contributions and the emissions, the reality is that for the last several decades, we have committed to many environmental treaties, and we're not making a dent on the emissions. The emissions continue to grow as if we were doing nothing. So obviously, the ambition has to be greatly expanded if we, in fact, are going to keep the climate at 1.5. The other part of the hashtag is just, and this is really important, because rich countries, like the country we're in now, are not going to have a problem. We can adapt to climate change. If the ocean comes up, we'll have the resources to manage. But there are other countries that are not going to be able to do that. Bangladesh is not going to be able to build the defenses to avoid sea level rise. African countries are going to suffer droughts. And it is precisely the poorest countries that are going to suffer the most from climate change. So there is a huge, very important notion here of equity. Climate change is going to affect the poorest countries the most. And those are the countries that can defend themselves the least. So there is an issue of ambitions, and there is an issue of justice at the same time. So I think this hashtag is really important. The third question is best practices, international initiative best practices. I'm a very optimist, and I think there are several. I think there have been times where humanity has come together, and we have been able to solve problems, and we have been able to solve very serious environmental problems. The first one we solved was the depletion of the ozone layer. Let's not forget that. 30 years ago, the ozone layer was being destroyed, and we were making a huge hole in the ozone layer. And we were calculating that there would be rates of skin cancer that were going to go up at that. The Montreal Protocol brought countries together to reduce the emissions of chlorofluorocarbons, which is the substance that causes this. And in fact, 20 years ago, the ozone layer was starting to heal itself again, and now we don't have a problem with the ozone layer depletion. So humanity came together with science, we made commitments, we implemented them, and now we came back to situation of Mizan when it comes to the ozone layer. So that's a great example of how we were able to solve the problem. The second one is acid rain. Acid rain many years ago was a huge problem in many countries. If you go to Europe, you're going to see many of the old buildings and the stones that are almost disappeared because of the acid rain was destroying them. Today, there is no more acid rain. We understood what causes it, we stopped it, and now we don't have a problem with acid rain. And the third one, I'm going to pick up from Dr. Khalid, the book of Rachel Carson, Silent Spring. The problem that we were facing then, that was 1962, was that DDT, pesticide, was causing the eggshells of birds to be very, very, very thin. And then when the birds would try to incubate, the eggs would break. And what Rachel Carson said, if we continue to do this, the springs are going to be silent. We're not going to hear the birds because there's going to be no birds. So what we did is we totally banned DDT, and DDT is not used anymore in the world. There are pesticides that probably as bad or worse, but at least we have the birds singing in the spring. So I think that there have been many instances where humans have been able to understand and to solve the problems, and therefore I'm optimistic that for climate we will be able to do the same. My fear is that we're going to see some suffering before that happens, because the curves and the increase of temperature and some of the effects are irreversible. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. Let me just go to the final question, which is the future of the current climate crisis and the Al-Mizan attempt to understand the crisis. Here, I'm going to go back to some of the early environmental movement that Dr. Khalid mentioned. And when we look at our response to some of these issues, biodiversity loss, climate change, pollution, and all of the environmental issues, the countries and the international treaties take a utilitarian approach, purely utilitarian approach. Why are we fighting climate change? Because if we don't do that, we're going to cook. Okay, it's centered on the human being. We need to defend ourselves. So climate change is bad because otherwise we will cook. Why do we fight pollution? Because if we don't fight pollution, we're going to get sick. Okay? Always thinking about ourselves. Why do we want to avoid biodiversity loss? Because we lost the ecosystems, and then we lost the agriculture, and then we suffer. So the entire architecture for environmental management in the world is based on the utilitarian concept. And what we have lost is the ethical argument for conserving the planet. And I think that's where this Islamic approach to sustainability really comes into play very well. We should not destroy biodiversity because we don't have the right to do it. We should not warm the planet because we don't have the right to do it. On the contrary, we have a duty to live in harmony with the world in which we are, and that's exactly how the Islamic approach sees the thing. So I think that these are Mizan efforts, the fact that Islamic sustainability is a pillar of Qatar Foundation's strategy is really, really critical to bring in and to recover this ethical dimension, this dimension based on values, based on the fact that we were put together for a reason. We don't have the right to destroy nature, but we have a duty to conserve it. So I think I'll finish there. I thank you, Dr. Top, for giving me the first, and I still can wait another 20 minutes to hear your panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, there, Dr. Gonzalo, for your reflections and starting off, and we totally understand. So hopefully in the next version of the Mizan, we'll have a different version of collaboration, and we'll have you again, inshallah. Thank you. Ms. Zainel, floor is yours.
Today, this is a very interesting subject, and one that I've been interested in for a long time, which takes us to the first question, actually, the personal anecdotes, and how, this subject came about. So watch me age myself. So I graduated, I'm a product of ECU. I graduated from ECU in 2005. And I worked, my first job out of college was at Carnegie Mellon, which was actually at the time at the Well Cornell building.
So the community, of students and alumni was quite intimate, let's say. And at the time, we were starting to have a lot of international students, and there were a lot of students from the region, from Kuwait, from Saudi Arabia, but also from Pakistan and India. And we found ourselves in this amazing education city with a lot of facilities and a lot of privilege, actually. And but we had a kind of a crisis of conscience where we were privileged, but we felt that there was a responsibility that we had. So we founded something. A group of us founded what we called at the time Muslim Youth for Education City, MYEC. And we looked at different issues in the community, social issues. For me, the interest was not necessarily, I didn't call it environmental at the time, but it was a question of waste. So I studied graphic design in VCU, and as a graphic designer, we looked at a lot of print, and we printed a lot of things, all the time, and it was a lot of printing. And we used to joke in class, that, we're killing a lot of trees, but we kind of have to. So it became an issue for me, and the perspective was, from Surah Al-Furqan, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا وَكَانَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ قَوَامًا. And we felt that, we were not we were not establishing a mizan in terms of what we had to do versus other practices. So we looked at ways of, reducing waste. It was a grassroots effort amongst the students and the alumni. We didn't want to involve the administration. We want to completely bypass, all of that. Now I'm sitting here, representing the administration. But that is how it started for me as a student in EC, feeling the need to contribute to the feeling the privilege that we had, but also feeling the need to really be responsible with the resources that were given to us. So that's how it started for me. It kind of evolved as a mother into practices. How I teach my daughter about, for example. We don't waste water, not just because wasting water is bad, but also because, in Islam, that is not supposed to, that is not something we're supposed to do as Muslims. And it goes into many other examples, but, it started with, to me, it's always about waste and reduction of waste. Of course, there are other aspects to it as well, but the aspect that resonates with me the most is waste. Regarding the COP18 hashtag just and ambitious, I think it aligns very nicely with the work we're doing in higher education. Our vision for higher education is to build the future of Qatar by nurturing capable, well-rounded, value-driven human beings who are committed to lead and shape their communities. So we're not only looking for ambitious and excellence in education and excellence in academics, we're also looking for decent human beings who are able to then, realize the privilege that they've had through the education that they've had here, and then be able to contribute to their communities. And that, again, goes beyond the idea of waste, obviously, but it goes to the point of how are you going to use your capabilities? How are you going to create justice where you are? How are you going to, use your education, whether in engineering or medicine, computer science, to actually fight, climate change issues, other societal issues, and so on. So it resonates, and I think it's a good hashtag because it's something that we believe in higher education here at QF. As far as the best practices for balancing human and nature, the good trends that I'm seeing is that there is a consciousness about personal duty, personal responsibility, but then corporate responsibility, national responsibility, nations come together, as Gonzalo said, and to solve world problems. But it starts with the person. And in the past, I think maybe in generations, in my generation, we always felt like, it's up to the government to solve things. It wasn't really about us. But say through my education here in Education City, and now this is what we're trying to instill also with the students, is that, it starts with you. It starts with your practices, and then it goes to, it has a ripple effect, basically. So I think that's, we're going in the right direction. But, this consciousness, which takes me to the fourth question, there's a kind of a woke, so there's this woke trend that's happening, globally, and it has some good qualities. But I think the youth is looking at that trend from a global perspective rather than a local and Islamic perspective. And although there are good aspects to that movement, there are also aspects that are not necessarily aligned with our values and our traditions. So, the challenge for us becomes, how do we raise or nurture students and learners who are able to choose for themselves and able to, through Islamic values, through culture, through tradition, to actually understand and choose for themselves what is actually, what makes sense for me? How do I contribute to this movement? How do I, where do I step back? So this is where I see the future. It's all about human capital here in QF. We always say it's all about unlocking the human potential, but that is something we absolutely believe in. And truly, it starts with the students. It starts with the learners, whether it's on the K-12 level or beyond in the higher education level. In education, we're making sure that there are classes and courses that are teaching sustainability, teaching ethics that surround the idea. So beyond the classroom, they need to take that into the actual education itself, the city curriculum. And I'll stop there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for Ms. Hend, and I'm sure there'll be very many questions to you and in the final session. There, Mr. Darwish, the floor is yours.
I will take you from different angles. Let me tell you the story of the place where we are in Qatar. We all sit and talk about environment, how bad it is, how dangerous it is, what we've done to it, we destroyed it. But we do forget that all that we see around was one day needed some solution, and that solution was no choice but for us to go to the direction that we went in order to achieve the goal that we wanted. Eastern, Western, North, East, wherever. 100 years ago, people used to use coal. Oil and gas was dream for us to come. And when oil and gas came and changed the life of this earth, energy came to resolve many issues, to give us the better standard of living. We were not aware of what we were doing. We were not aware of the technology that we were using. We were not able to stop. We had to continue. That step took us to achieving the goal that we wanted to achieve 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. And by that, we did solve a lot and protected the environment a lot. We changed from burning wood, cutting trees, from using coal to turning into oil, using oil, jumping for gas, looking into hydrogen today, solar energy. This takes time. And it did. It did cost us, yes. And we're not paying for it today, yes. But we're also benefiting from it as well, a lot. The ledger that we're living is because of what has happened. Regardless of who's the victim is environment. But who is actually is the side who has caused this? It's us, human. is a greed. Greed. We want better life, faster car, better air conditioning, better heating system, better God knows what. We want better, and we destroy things around, and we say, sorry, we are damaging our environment. Solution is us. How do we do it? But how do we do it is not easy. It's not. Today, when I witnessed the two gentlemen produce a fantastic document, a proposal for us to be implemented worldwide, really good. Does that mean that we didn't have any document at all? We had policies, procedures, aspects that could prevent many problems, but we did practice. It is there. There are countries who are actually destroying, and they're the one who are claiming that others are doing. And there are countries who are in poverty, sitting there doing nothing, and we blaming them. Fact of life. We like it, we don't like it. Now, to do so, say we cannot sit back and say, that's it, we're in trouble, there's no solution. The whole world is looking for solutions. But solution is not as clear as we look at it. There's greed in it as well. We jump into this disaster with greed, and we're coming out of this with greed. Oops. What's the greed that we're coming out? Somebody is coming and saying, we have to use this type of technology. We're trying to take the control of one side of the world, put it in somebody else's hand on the other side of the world, in order to be the pioneer who take the advancement and have better chance for them to be the leaders. Greed. Nothing to do with environment. Environment is the big victim in all this. Whether we want to go and stop it, or we are replacing the disaster type of the disaster that's coming, or we want to replace it, is the victim. And the victim of the environment and the cause of it is us. Some of us, we say that poverty and there are people who are actually damaging it. That might be true. They don't have the system. They don't have sewage system. They don't have anything. Zero level life. Zero. Why we don't go and help them? It's because we're not really not interested. We're not. We could go country by country, solve. The budget of the earth is about 4 trillion. Can't we save 10% of that and solve one part at a time for 100 years and we solve it? It's not. It's nothing to do with that. So, where do we go? What do we do? Let me tell you a story of Qatar. In year 2001, Qatar decided to go and get up the level of the environment awareness and environment protection. And in 2001, that's 21 years ago, the direction was taken was one, to go to the leaders, and second, to go to the kids. Get the two together. Leaders have commitment. Leaders, I mean here, ministers. And kids was go to school. The concept that was put together is for the kid to take a solution to mama. Not even the father, the mother. Apply it. They did. The government decided to go, yes, we want to make sure that UNEP is happy with us, satisfied. Because we want to go for loan, we want to go for expansion, we have program, we have gas, we want to go for more gas, more production, better economy, right? Believe you me, so they say, it worked.
They did. But it took 20 years, 21 years. It didn't happen just like that. 21 years and lots of money, hundreds of billions of dollars. Many countries cannot do it. It's not possible to do it. It will never get resolved. Now, all this create different challenges in different countries at a different level. We can all sit back and accuse China as the one, they're the troublemaker. They are. Yet we go use nuclear tests, nuclear bomb, nuclear God knows what, but China is a naughty one. We really hate them. Arabs are producing oil now, but Chinese are the one who are using the ones. They are the one. It doesn't work. We need to sit back and say, what have I done? What is my status? How do I resolve it on my side? Plus, we need to get together. Start with something called, let's exchange the capacities, the knowledge that we have. The two gentlemen here are producing fantastic document. Why nobody else used the other document 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago? Why? Why are we waiting for 2022 to get a document to go forward? What's wrong with us? Look at the guy, gray hair. We were around 40 years ago. Why we didn't do it? Blame is not going to get anywhere. Accusing is not going to get anywhere. How do we start? Where do we go? What to do? I think if we have the good intention to resolve anything, is to stop first. Stop. Don't say my economy, I cannot do it. It's my country. We cannot progress. We need to progress. Don't. Just stop. Evaluate what is happening. The evaluation is there. How do we go and apply? Where do we start? In which country we go? How do we clear continents? Let's say this continent is going to be the one that we want to start. This country is the one. We know that there are poor countries of value, but we cannot use those countries say, you need to have study, and you need to have research, and you need to have technology. The other one wants a solution. They can't afford it, full stop. So put them in debt, and they become poorer every day, and they get worse situation, and they destroy the environment more and more. If we look at the other creatures on this earth, they're all safe. Safe. Believe me. The unknown one is safer. The one that we cannot see is even safer than us. So, if I may say, if it is possible, one day, it's for us to have the faith, to believe in ourselves that, yes, we need to start from families created there. That is a solution. 2021, kids in the house where they were in grade 1 and grade 2, today are decision makers. Yeah. That's how I can start and say, yeah, we can do it that way. I'm not saying that we have the perfect situation, but we are much better than many other countries around the world. And the proof that we produce oil, gas, invest in hydrogen, invest in solar energy, invest in air, in everything we do to make sure that we go with the world, to make sure that when we invest in those technology, the scientists in one country get benefits. They will do something. If we don't purchase things from their side, they will not progress. To go and see apply. When we go and apply somewhere, somebody says it's a test. We are trying to test on different people. No, we're going there to see how does it work. Can it be better? Give them a better life. So if we can do some balancing in our life, think about the balance. Start from our own house, let's say, with the family around us. I think we can achieve a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darwish. And there, Dr. Mustafa, the floor is yours. And after Dr. Mustafa's session, we'll have a Q&A, and then we'll have a short break for Maghrib prayer, and we'll rewrite. The floor is yours, Dr. Mustafa.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'd like to thank everybody here, especially our guests. And I'll try to be focused and short so that we can catch Maghrib brain, inshallah. Start by the anecdote. I will just remind you the flood of this year in two countries, Sudan and Pakistan. One third of Pakistan covered with water, and it's still going on till now. When I was watching Al Jazeera TV, one of the rescuers is carrying a baby, newborn baby. The story of that baby is that his mother, a pregnant woman, driven by water, and during this process, she born the baby. The baby was rescued by the rescuer. Still, his umbilical cord with him. Unfortunately, the mother died, but the baby was rescued, and he's still alive. You can just think, if it happens that this baby, he lives and become an active, how he's going to respond to what has happened. I would link this flooding, of course, to climate change. So I believe that although the story is a sad story, we lost the mother. We don't know what's going to happen to the baby. But such baby, if we look at him very, carefully, and we put him in the picture and others about what is going on, what is the reflect and the impact of climate change, these are the ones who are going to lead, in fact, the change and to try to mitigate what is happening. Moving from that to the first question, how we are going to translate or COP27, how is going to translate the hashtag trust and ambitious? I would say two things. To do trust, start by yourself. To do trust, be fair. Who brought this problem of climate change? The rich, the developed countries. So it's only fair, it's only just that they should pay the bulk of the expense of the challenge. And to be ambitious, then you have to be transparent. Implement what you already decided. Paris Agreement 2015 is still lagging. So really, if you want really to translate trust and ambitious, do these two things. Be fair, implement what you already decided in order to go forwards. What does it mean globally? Globally, I think if you want to do this, first, make it a priority. Till now, other things are priority. People are talking about climate change, but still, to transfer it into practical steps, we are still far off. Secondly, the network which start to be established now, make it active so that it could start to implement what you decided globally. Thirdly, take the responsibility. What is the contribution of my organization? I belong to a university, Hamad bin Khalifa University. According to the goal and objectives of the universities usually do three things. Serving communities, number two, teaching students, and number three, do research. All these three could be fully involved in to help in climate change. This session itself is part of service community. We are trying to increase the awareness of the community about the crisis, about the negative impact of the climate change. We could hold conferences, workshops, seminars. All of this is part of my job as a university to the community. Number two, student. I can include in my syllabus to the student the Mizan, for example, the Islamic concept of environment, what's been written regionally, internationally, what are the national governments are doing in order to combat climate change. Thirdly, research. I could direct my student, my colleague, myself, our grant, all of it in order to do research about climate change. So this is going to be my contribution, the contribution of my organization. I would expect any similar organization. Second question, I think some of the practices which it took me so much is what Professor Fazlun just mentioned it, the fishermen in Zanzibar. This is a good example how we can involve imams. This is a good example how we can involve Muslim scholars. This is a model which could start locally, regionally, and internationally. So a lot of lessons, many lessons we can learn from this. Number one, how influence religion could be for people in order to implement and to do their responsibilities. Secondly, how such a practice could start locally, but it could be implemented globally. And there are many lessons I think we can get out from what our Professor Fazlun mentioned just now. How do you see the future of the current climate crisis we are living? To be honest with you, gloomy, dark. This is how I see it. Unless a serious effort being built and a change, a real change took place, we are going to go deeper and deeper in this crisis. Why I said so? Why I said gloomy? Because, to be honest with you, still there are many leaders, they are not serious. How comes that a country like United States, number one, which is responsible for climate change, to sign a Paris Agreement, and the administration after that to come and to withdraw from the agreement? This is an indication of what can I put? You cannot say that the world is serious if they can sign such an agreement after long discussions. And I was part of that. And then suddenly the president came and said, no, we're not going to be part of it. We frozen it. The third thing is that Europe now, due to the war in Ukraine, Europe now is coming back to using coal, which we thought that we forgot using. So these are the things which we need to make sure that this is going to send a wrong signals to all the states, to all the communities. Because if my boss is not serious, am I going to be serious? I will never be. So always remember that you need to have a model, a trusty model. What type of change and transformation needed in order to respond to the crisis? I believe from what we have today and yesterday and the research which we are studying. By the way, I think maybe Dr. Ibrahim or Iyad mentioned about the speech of Prince Charles. Now he's King Charles. By the way, I wish that all of you can go and read that booklet. He talked about Islam and the relationship between a human being and nature from an Islamic point of view, more than many Islamic scholars, they did. So the gentleman is not a Muslim, but he read and he said that the wisdom that Islam gifted to people is something which you cannot imagine. In fact, he is about to say that you cannot find it in any religion. So it is clear that we have to go back and we have to study Islam and we have to include the concept of Islam in all our behavior, in all our syllabus, in all our communication, in order to increase the awareness of people. And then I think also what we need, part of our seriousness, and there should be a sort of incentivization and a sort of accountability. There must be a sort of accountability. You can get two neighbors. One is very keen to clean his house, but to clean also in front of his house. The other one, he will clean his house, but he dumped it in front of his house. If you're going to say it's up to them, I don't think we're going to move forward. So I have here to incentivize the one who's cleaning his house and in front of his house, the one who is cultivating a tree in front of his house and in the street, and the one who are cutting trees. So accountability and incentivization, it has to be a methodology to be adopted and to be used. And then a form of taxation, but not a traditional taxation. I'm not talking about paying money, but you can say that if you want to cut a tree, then you have to cultivate the tree. If you want to cut a forest, then you have to cultivate a forest. And people could try to initiate a lot of initiatives like this. Of course, I can add education, media, and so on, but due to time, I think I will stop here. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much, there, Dr. Mustafa, and all the panelists. So the Maghreb prayer time is coming. We'll be taking a break, but before the break, we would like to have a short Q&A session. So rather than question by question, let's collect 5 questions and let's expect each of the panelists to respond in their few minutes. Okay. So if you have a question, please keep it really succinct and straight. So rather than commenting, if you can please highlight your question directly, and in the break or in the future, of course, the communication continues. Please, if you can also identify yourself, if you're a student or working here.
I mentioned this yesterday, but I was a student. I just graduated recently. And I want to quickly talk about or ask, most of us here are, or a lot of people here are researchers, intellectuals, public speakers. And I think everybody agrees, we're all kind of on the same page. But what can be done? If we're talking locally, what is being done and what can be done? Because a lot of people are working at their homes. A lot of people are doing the work in homes, but there's still so much infrastructure that isn't there. Plastic bottles, so many compounds are isolated and people can't recycle. Something as basic as recycling in this country, the infrastructure isn't there for it, and this infrastructure that is there is either not known or not really being practiced. So how do we take this from the classroom? How do we take it from the boardrooms and go to the real world? Is my question. And because we have a lot of ideas. The ideas are constantly coming. It's been happening for a long time. How do we expand the space
And yeah,
I
thank
guess
you.
my
Thank you
answer.
so much. Can I second question, please? Yes, Imam.
My name is Iman. I recently graduated working at the Foundation as a researcher. And my question is very similar to the previous question. However, it's more in terms of mindset as opposed to physical, tangible change. Because I think when you're raised in a society of privilege, such as the one in Qatar, you are very privileged to be in certain situations, but you struggle to step outside of this mindset where you don't see sustainability as an inconvenience. And so my question in short would be, how do you encourage that mindset shift in a way that isn't alarmist, in a way that doesn't depend on showing media broadcasts of floods and this terror that we find very difficult to understand and to relate to?
Thank you, Iman. And yes, exactly, please.
Associate CEO's office here at Qatar Foundation. It's more of a technical question, but I'll ask anyway. The concept of sustainability generally is, I would refer to it as kind of racist. The issue with it is a lot of solutions aren't really applicable to climates such as Qatar. So my question is, how do you start to fix that mindset first and start to look at that there are different types of environments that require different solutions?
I think 3 questions. I don't see another question. So please, their panelists, would you like to start there? Hend? Yes.
So I'm not going to answer Fahad's question. Happy to share my thoughts after. I'll attempt to answer the first two. So, Other Foundation has always been a great place for testing new ideas. At times we moved with certain ideas quite quickly and, implemented them on the ground, and the country basically, followed suit because they saw that they were implementable in Education City. And in other areas, we took a little bit of time. I think a lot of these ideas, there is now a working group that is actively working towards implementing, the ideas that we've been talking about. I always say there's no shortage of great ideas of the foundation. It's just a matter of implementation. And now there is a working group that is charged with actually implementing a lot of these ideas. Doesn't mean that the solution is near. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but at least we're starting somewhere and we're starting to implement. So we're taking the great thing about the foundation and Education City is that it's a diverse community. It doesn't only take into consideration, the Qatari community or the expat community. It also looks at other kind of marginalized communities. That's my answer. It's not a perfect solution. But at least we're taking a first step towards the right direction. On the question of mindset, I would say, the fact that, congratulations on graduating from Georgetown. I think the fact that, we're here and we have this great education, it is changing the mindset. A few years ago, if I, for example, did not receive my education in Education City, I don't think I'll really care, to be completely honest with you. It is because we're receiving this education that is challenging our thinking and challenging our privilege and is making us aware that, there is a lot, there's a world beyond Qatar and there's a world beyond, everything that we're used to and the comforts of this country. That is the reason why we're asking these questions. I think if we continue to instill, Islamic values through everything we're doing, and the fact that we all are responsible towards our own communities, whether they're Muslim communities or not, we are responsible towards them as individuals. The change starts from there. I think, we have a long way to go again, but at least we're taking steps and we're aware of the problem and, again, moving slowly but surely towards the solution.
Well, on my side, I think this is, taking Qatar again as an example, we have 150 odd languages in the world, 107 nationalities in the world. deal with Noha as an example is a very complicated issue. The point is you cannot say we will focus on one area and the other. We can go and kill the rabbits in the desert, but we will save the fishes. You can't say that. You have to have it all. To have it all, legislation is the key. We need to put a law. You have to do it. This is a must. You will be punished if you don't comply. But that has to have a base again. Whatever we apply it in Doha is not possible to go and apply it in Bangladesh. It's not possible. Or whatever we do it in Arabia, it's not possible to be applied in Europe. That's not possible. But all that has to have the main decision. United Nations has to do something. UNEP, with all these years of it being existing around, they need to do something. The enforcement of there is no one exempt. Everyone has to comply. You cannot export your, as Mustafa said, the garbage of your house and put it in front of you. I don't want to say that my house is clear. No, sir. And you cannot say also that yes, environment is not my business. I'm producing gas now. I'm happy. Qatar is here, relaxed. We put back the chair, sit and enjoy. We can't say that. So, the models of the proposal that come has to consider that. So bear in mind that this model has to be rigid from one angle, where the basis and the structure of it is there, that you have to comply, no option. But it is suggested that you look into the different parts of the world, different economies, different level, and try to apply something customized. Not customized where we give them different options. The target is the objective is the way we apply it is different. And we engage. We have now carbon there needs to be applied somehow. Somebody needs to pay or somebody else. And in Qatar, for example, I don't know whether you're aware, but in Qatar, alhamdulillah, in year 2004, from 2004, it's not a question of dumping dirt in the sea or the waste in the sea. We introduced the water cooling system where there is no drop of recycled water or produced water or associated water goes into the sea unless it is the same temperature as the water in the sea. So the fish is not to be, but that is because alhamdulillah, economy here is strong. Is when we applied here the policy and the legislation, we went to each and every sectors, and it was quite challenging. You go and you get the fishermen to do and comply. Next day, you say somebody broke the rule, and you ask the guy, "Why did you do this?" I don't know. I just came from airport. So what we have applied 2-3 months ago, to him is nothing. He doesn't know. So these challenges, I think there is no single solution. There is no one solution that can be done, but there is one legislation that we need to apply. And inshallah, it will get better. I don't think it will disappear, but inshallah, it will get better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you very much. I will respond to the first question, what can be done? Look, Ayat, you did, and your colleague, a very good document and Mizan. There is no doubt about that. But that is not enough. In order to implement the Mizan, I know that the UN is behind the Mizan. But the UN is not only for governments. The UN is not like Arab League, for example, for the states. No, it is for nations, people, and the state. Governments will be reluctant because all what we are saying is not to be exactly on their benefits. They will seek the easiest way. But the mobilization of the people is very important. And the UN can do that. So how do? You mobilize people. Let the people demonstrate on the street to pressurize UN and summits and so on in order to put sanctions, to put incentives for those states whom they implement. and also sanctions and taxation for this state whom they do not implement. Create movements. These movements to call themselves, for example, friends of environment or friends of Mizan or whatever it is, they call for the implementation. And your document need a system of evaluation and implementation. I think if we can do that, then we can move forward. We can try to implement Al Mizan, which is a good document for me, but it needs to be implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim. And then, Mr. Qusif, I think you also wanted to say something, right? Yeah. First, let's have Dr. Ibrahim and then yourself, and then we finish the session.
I just want why we are here. We have been working for this project more than 3 years. And we are very honored to be here. You may remember there was a book on New York Times bestseller list, headed by Khalid, promoting of our college, also our more than 30 years. Excellence without a soul. He said, yes, we have excellent education, higher education in America, but most students, they are so selfish, they're destroying themselves, they're destroying everything. Can't help on the other street, just, the backstreet of Harvard something is having nobody have this old man. So, but come clear for me, there is a soul of this university and also Qatar Foundation. Thank you very much. I am more hopeful about the future now.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. And final comments, please, Mr. Qusif. If you could introduce yourself also, please.
Thanks a lot for the invite, and I listened to all the speakers. Amazing. What we need to focus on, I recommend all of you, please go to Qatar Gas website now, or maybe afterwards, fill the carbon footprint calculator. We developed what Professor mentioned, how can we take action? So we give you the tool, it's a free calculator, calculate your carbon footprint from your household activities, from all the things. So that's the first step, to calculate your baseline and take action. And as you mentioned, yeah, some solutions are not there, but still work in progress. Last but not the least, as Qatar Gas or State of Qatar, we have the world's largest CO2 carbon sequestration plant, one of the best in marine biodiversity. Unfortunately, people don't know. So that's unfortunate part, and we are the transition partner. What someone mentioned that coal is coming up, so natural gas is the key, and that's what we are doing. So thanks a lot for organizing this. We need to create more awareness so that they can make better choices and decisions. Thanks.
Thank you so much again. And now we're taking a break, which is a true 15-minute break. So at 6:15 we will be starting. So please also bring your tea or coffee, and a true 15 minutes.
Okay.
Those of you joining online, you can relax for 15 minutes. Hello, everyone. Online people, are you still with us?
Sure.
Yeah.
If I move this here. Oh, I need to bring this closer. Sorry. I don't know why it's so close up. Maybe is there like a setting here? Oh, is it from here?
Are you open?
Yeah.
I'll get started. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, we're back. Starting later than expected, which means we're really going to want to squeeze this session if you all want to get home in time for dinner. Okay, so our second panel discussion, long-awaited panel discussion with our team. Talking about Nizam, its applicability and Islamic basis, and we will be having Dr. Adil Jayusi. I'm going to go in order here. Adil Jayusi, an expert in sustainability and innovation. Dr. Ibrahim Osmani, who is an environmentalist and professor of philosophy, ecology, and religion at Ankara University in Turkey. Dr. Iyad Al-Hadi, who is the founder and director of the United Nations program Faith for Earth Initiative, and sorry, I have it right here because there was a change of plans at the end there. Mr. Ahmed Al-Ghalib,
Visionist.
Sorry, you're going to have to say it. What?
Conservationist.
There we go. And plants ecologist at Quranic Botanic Garden, and member of IUCN Commission of Ecosystem Management and IUCN Special Survival Commission. The floor is yours, Doctor.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Just a quick correction, the Dr. Ibrahim is from Üsküdar University. Yeah, so it's okay. No worries. I think you've worked at Ankara University before too. Yeah. So this is the last session. And of course, I think it's better to...
Last session for today. We will have future sessions.
Yeah.
You don't know. Maybe today is or tomorrow is the first day of the rest of our lives. We don't know. So
This is ambition.
but Dr. Mustafa ended with a gloomy and dark future.
Yeah.
So it's a gloomy and dark. So I want to actually start with that. But before, as we did in the previous panel, can we ask kindly to each panelist to share an anecdote, something that affected you deeply in your life, which really reinforced your connection to climate, environment, nature, or in terms of what you do right now?
Yeah, maybe you can.
No, they said this is the order.
Dr. Ode, please.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here today. Well, I think many stories to share, and perhaps one story is about the meaning of shape thing in Quran. And shape in Arabic, translated shape, it's X. The X value, it's a variable, it's a random variable. In the English language, when you translate the shape thing, it means only the material thing. It's basically the non-living. However, in Arabic, we say in Quran, وَإِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُ وَكُلٌّ قَدْ عَلِمَ صَلَاتَهُ وَتَسْبِيحَهُ. يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. So basically, every living or non-living species in this cosmos, in this universe, is in a state of worship and tasbih. So the atom, when the atom cannot be moody and say, well, I don't want to rotate counterclockwise. Today I'm tired. I need vacation. Nor the lemon tree or the butterflies. They say, well, I need to take vacation to Turkey. I need vacation to Sudan or whatever. So basically, there are sunan, there are social laws. So I think the anecdote simply is that every living thing is, every thing, shape is articulate, intelligent, and alive. So it's basically we live in a sacred earth. So we are not just a human want to conquer nature, but rather there is a spiritual relationship. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Professor.
والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I am a village boy. When I started my PhD in early 90s, I have 4 children. Now I have more 3 grandchildren. And at that time, I just thought, what's going to be about the environment will be in the future. Because I saw the first wolf in the nature when I was 7 years old in my village. Then I never thought in the future my children and my grandchildren gonna to not see any wild animals in the forest. For example, when I took my 7 years old granddaughter to a forest, she asked me, "Grandpa, why we are here?" I said, "I will introduce you to plants, some trees and pine trees, different pine trees, and also, if you are lucky, I will introduce you some wild animals." She was scared, but I said, "Don't worry, I'm with you." But for 3 days, I couldn't show her any wild animals. Wild animals is gone, and all children and grandchildren are playing with video games. They couldn't, identify animals. They don't know animal names. They don't know plants name. So we are disconnected with nature. This the village where I never thought when I was young, my grandchildren will be in this situation, and this is disappoints me, and this is why I put all my academic energy, environmental philosophy, and ecology, and also activism.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes. Thank you very much. Certainly, there are so many turning points in my life, but I will pick one that is very relevant to the subject. I started working with the United Nations 26 years ago, and we started talking about Agenda 21, if you are old enough to know that. And it is the start of the discussions on sustainable development. And at the same time, when I was the assistant resident representative of the UN in Jordan, and every time I speak to somebody, they say, "Al-Islam huwa al-hal." Islam is the solution. When we talk about economic issues, they say Islam huwa al-hal. And when we talk about social issues, they say Al-Islam huwa al-hal. And to me, probably that is patriotic in terms of being Muslims, but it is not justified, or I did not see anything that justifies this notion of Islam huwa al-hal. So I took it upon myself and I said, well, there's the Sustainable Development Agenda, Agenda 21, and let me try to study Islam as well as study the sustainable development. And that was the turning point that I see for the first time in my life. My paper, Islam and Sustainable Development, after 8 years of giving that lecture here in Qatar in 2014. But the paper that I wrote actually was in the year 2000, 22 years ago. And I took every single principle of sustainable development and I related it to Islamic principles on Al-Hima, for example, which now is taught by IUCN as the guidelines for establishing conservation areas. On water resources, لا تسرف الماء حتى ولو كنت على نهر الجاري. Every single principle of sustainable development, I found a reference to it in Al-Quran and Islam. And that was, a turning point that the cultural aspects of what we do is very important. It is when I started this work with Faith for Earth, or when I founded Faith for Earth, and I had to isolate myself for 6 months inside of my office, and I studied almost all known religions. Because as a secular organization, UN, I cannot represent Islam. I cannot represent Christianity. Or I have to be holistic. So I studied Buddhism, I studied Christianity, I studied Judaism, I studied Taoism, I studied Confucianism. And to tell you the truth, if you close your eyes and somebody reads from the Veda, which is the Buddhist, script, you would think it is from a Quran Kareem. Of course, if you read it in a different language than Arabic, because Arabic has this special music and connotation and so on. So this made me really realize that God exists for sure, and God has sent messengers for sure. 25 of them are mentioned in the Quran, but Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says that there were 120,000 messengers that he sent on earth. So this makes you believe more of the reason why we exist as a global human community, and we should be all together. And this is part of my call for multilateralism or interfaith collaboration. And this is what I'm working on, and I hope that we contribute to humanity. Thank you.
Dr. Yad, it's very inspirational. There, Sir Ahmed.
I will start with the end of the talk of the Dr. Yad for the Islam and responsibility, or the environment, responsibility or sustainability in Islam. In 2007, actually, the project of the Quranic Botanic Garden, when it was an idea come from the UNESCO at this time, and then Professor Batanoni and Dr. Saif Al-Hajri and the group of Dr. Mitfa as well, and Dr. Benabor, they take this opportunity and they implement the idea into the project. And here what we need to go with Mizan as well. It needs to be converted somehow from something from the policies into implementations. This is what we need exactly to do. Now we had a great, as Dr. Mustafa mentioned in his talk, we had a great documents and policies. Dr. Darwish as well. We had this from 40 years ago. But what we need exactly for implementation. I will also talk about need to highlight the ayah قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا. Yeah, Allah urge us to walk and seek sa'i, and the sa'i, or it needs force. This we need force. So environment or sustainability or environmental sustainability needs something like legislation. It need to be enforcement. But right now we are working separate islands. We may talk to separate. Mizan is included in the Quran Botanic Garden. The ethics including Qadr Foundation, but it needs to be connected somehow. We need one umbrella, and I recommend that we could declare the Mizan policy for sustainability. Maybe it needs to be it needs a force, like Dr. Mustafa mentioned. It needs a force, comes from the countries, but NGOs as well. This kind of conferences as well, it could help and could affect. But at least we need to write something in order to reach out the message. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In fact, over the break, I was getting a lot of feedback from some of our students and colleagues that we have really globally prominent colleagues here sharing their wisdom with us and enlightening us about their thoughts. And the audience wants to have more questions. So let's twist things a little bit, and then let's turn to the audience rather than me asking questions all the time. So let's open it up. We have so many students, colleagues. So
let's start. My name is Hamad.
Okay.
At Imperial College. And my question for our team colleagues about the Mizan work. How does your current findings support the connection between scientific evidence and Quran evidence of climate change? If you can give examples.
Well, this is a very important question, and we were discussing it today, this morning, with the office of the CEO of Qatar Foundation. And this is exactly what we're working on at the United Nations, establishing a consortium, a global consortium, to bridge the understanding between sciences and religions. Both of those powers, I call them the power of religion and the power of science, they speak the same language and they talk about the same thing. You know, scientists through the IPCC report, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the sixth version that was issued a month ago, gives the scientific evidence of climate change and where we are today. And if the temperature exceeds 1.5 to 3.7, what happens to coral reefs, what happens to droughts and floods and so on. And at the same time, religions talk about the responsibility of man. For example, in the Holy Quran, it says, and I'll correct my memory of the verse, وظهر الفساد في الأرض في البر والبحر. And if you know the Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure Dr. Evren has been knocking on you to memorize them. There's the underwater Sustainable Development Goal and the above land Sustainable Development Goal. And the causes for the degradation of land and the over-exploitation of the resources of the seas are, of course, human and man-made. So there's a clear connection of what religions say, in this case, the Quran Kareem, and what scientists have found, that due to pollution, due to over-extraction, overfishing, due to destruction of coral reefs. Coral reefs and the mangroves. I think Qatar is known for those mangroves.
Yeah.
Those are the reason to protect lands from floods and from high seas and so on. And one which we are now promoting as a global initiative is nature-based solutions. You can rely on nature to find solutions for the problems that we have made. So go back again, but this time not exploit nature, but use nature to protect or to reverse the damage that we have done. So we're promoting the plantation of mangroves everywhere, especially around coastal lines and so on. So this is one of the examples that I can give.
Okay, it's a very good question. Just let me remind you, the first Muslim scholar and scientist who coined the term Ibn Mizan, who was Jabir bin Hayyan from 9th century, the father of chemistry. And there are more books on him in English, in German, and in Western languages. And he was also so pious man. This quantity came from the Quran. So today, our method is a holistic method to understand the Quran, the Sunnah, the history, the legacy, in the light of cutting edge of scientific findings. We have, as you see, we have scientists with us, we have engineers with us, we are joining all energy to understand this problem and also to present the modern world a solution. All Christian and Jewish and Buddhist and Hindu friends, the environmentalists, they are waiting from us a more holistic, more comprehensive answer from our tradition. In the past, I just studied the mosques and the Vakf Foundation in Istanbul. The majority of them they booked by ladies, by for birds, for migration birds, because Istanbul on the way of the storks, every year, just in August they again went to Professor Mustafa's the East Africa. Over Istanbul, 600,000 storks they pass each year. So this is a nice ventilation. Sometimes they are old, their legs is broken, they couldn't travel. They have foundation for them. This is a part of our Quranic civilization and also or Sunnah to Rasulullah. We have to revitalize this with the cutting edge of scientific findings, and also technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very, very interesting question. I think just to elaborate on two concepts. One is موزون والأرض فرشناها وأنبتنا وألقينا فيها الرواسي وأنبتنا فيها من كل شيء موزون. The idea of balance, مقدار, is a critical notion that there is order, there is no chaos, and there is what we call the butterfly effect. Everything matters. The other notion that was alluded to is the idea of natural state. Natural state is the balance that underpins what we call fitra, which means that there is this natural state when there is overconsumption, when there is greed and ignorance. When we talk about trusteeship, الأمانة, إن عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملها وأشفق منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. So the idea of ignorance and greed, ignorance and arrogance. So I think part of the blind spots of human is that they suffer from these two symptoms of what we call arrogance and ignorance, ظلوما جهولا. So basically, when we overconsume, there is what we call fasad. Fasad is you stay away from Mizan, you stay away from fitra or natural state. So the idea of Mizan is to regain consciousness, rethink the business model, rethink the paradigm for development, and which means basically what I call our debate. Maybe we are engaged in the wrong debate about climate change. Climate change is not only about number, positivism, it's part of the Western methodology. It's not about number, it's about the narrative, it's about the story. The story is not about saving whales or CO2 concentration. The story is about healing human civilization. So we are part of the environment. We are not observers. We are not consumers based on Adam Smith or the pursuit of happiness. We are part of nature. We are not just only observers. We are not only consumers. We are gardeners. So we need to protect our garden. I think we need to rethink our the right debates. It's not about numbers. It's about narrative. It's about the story, about healing human civilization. It's not about technical fix or changing a green building or changing the bulb. It's about changing our social DNA, about mindset, about culture. It's about healing human civilization. However, there is, I think, a sense of optimism and hope. in سورة الروم ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ويذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. So basically, facade is about there's injustice, there's imbalance, there is corruption, with a broader notion of corruption at all domains, so society, economy, and ecology, and governance. And in order to regain this fitra, natural state, the balance, you need to be accountable. بما كسبت أيدي الناس, we are accountable. But لعلهم يرجعون. لعلهم يرجعون means that we have an opportunity, we have a window of opportunity. There's a policy, a window of opportunity, and a policy that we can regain our balance. لعلهم يرجعون. So, and I think I will conclude with a beautiful hadith from Prophet Muhammad, even if you know it all, if it's the last day of judgment, and you have a small فسيلة, small palm tree, just plant it, فليغرسها. إذا قامت الساعة وكانت أحدكم فسيلة فليغرسها. I think this instilling a seed of hope that even if things are not working, you need to make sure that you have to plant a seed of hope for the future generations. What we are hearing today, that I'm very hopeful that with this institution, there is lots of beauty, art, articulation, and many rivers around here that we need to make sure that these rivers are flowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Just I want to add something to what the last hadith. If you are invited as a group of Muslim environmentalists to Nobel Peace Institute in Oslo in 2 years ago, and Mr. Professor Francis Fukuyama was keynote speaker. At the end of his speech, he said, honestly, I am not optimistic about the future. And I said, Mr. Fukuyama, when I look at the numbers, when I look at the statistics, I also get the same impression. But my prophet says, if it is the Qiyamah is coming, just plant this so I have to be hopeful. Then also, the Quran says, "La taqnatu min rahmatillah." Losing hope is bringing limit to God's power. He said, he gave very smart answer. He said, this is why we invited you here. Because Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, all they were gave hope to their community. Yeah.
And then
For the question, many organizations linking between the Islam and environmental sustainability. One of the real projects that Qatar declared in 2008, this is the Quranic Botanic Garden that we are talking about. We are highlighting the Islamic principles of conservation. So based on community development, community-based natural resource, as the Dr. had mentioned. So natural-based solution. So I think the sharing of the natural resources. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, الناس شركاء في الماء والكلأ والنار. في ثلاث. الماء والكلأ والنار. All the people together share the water and the rangeland and the fire. All this for all the people, not all the Muslims, for all the people. This is the main principle, sharing the natural resource. This is one of the main goals that we at the Quranic Botanic Garden highlighted and include all the people in the protection and conservation. Without community, people will not work. If we work at the organization, UN, ICN, or this one alone as organization, yeah, will not reach the goal. But it should start from the education. We should start from the people itself. If the people commitment, if we consider the people commitment, 20 years ago they started in 2001, and they hit the goal. At the end of the day, they hit the goal. So you change the mother, you change the education, not through only the curriculum, as we discussed yesterday. Curriculum, the people forget the curriculum, but make the hands dirty, make the people engage with you. This will take an action. This will help and focus. In 2018, this 4 years ago, we did a survey here in Education City Mosque about the Imam and Khutbah and how they deal with the environment. And we did a survey with the people. Imagine, only 5% of the people said that we heard about the environment from the mosque. So no, the talk is not as absent. So we need again to highlight this for the people who is leading. For the Imam, the Zanzibar Dr. Khalid mentioned that when you talk to the people that this has come from your religion, people understand, people do. But unfortunately, in our daily life, we talk about hasad, we talk about this, but we don't talk about environment. We need to start from the mosque. We need to talk to the people who's talking to this people, to general public. That's, we need to educate this one. If we start with this one, you will affect the generation. Okay, we just spent the khutbah of Jum'ah in a few minutes talking about the environment, for example. And unfortunately, the survey gives us that very little people heard about the environment from those one, and we need to generate to those people in order to enhance and to take the opportunity for the young generation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed and Mustafa.
About Mizan, the fourth of Ibrahim. And then for the first time I heard he talked about Mawzoon. It seemed to me to get an Arabic word to make it balance.
if we have Mawzun and if we have a Mizan, we need to add the word Mazin, Al-Wazin. So we have Al-Wazin who is doing Al-Mizan, then we have Al-Mizan, and then we have a Shay Al-Mawzun. That will make it easy for us to understand and to teach and to convey the message of Al-Mizan. So let us try to inject and use the word Al-Wazin. So we have Al-Mizan, Al-Wazin, Al-Mawzun.
And there is Mawazin as well.
الموازين
ونضع
الموازين is
The tools.
ونضع الموازين في الصيد.
Thank you so much.
Very good point. Thank you.
In fact, this point takes me to the next question, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but recently I have been part of this committee at the Qatar Foundation level, Islamic Sustainability Framework, and we had really wonderful discussions. And one of these discussions, I want to refer to the one of the really enriching Zoom sessions that I had with Reem Sahlawi, with one of our previous graduates who wrote a thesis on this topic, and a big enthusiast and also thinker and researcher. I remember in one of our conversations, we talked about this issue of agency, okay, the Mizan and the Muslim environmentalism. Who is the change maker? Who is the agent taking this further, right? And basically what you were just saying, who is gonna own it? Who is gonna take the responsibility, right? There's the big question of agency. And while we were doing it, we also talked about who are some visible examples of this agency. And we talked about someone like, for instance, Greta Thunberg, right? If you remember their name. So, of course, a different type of diplomacy, and we call it like angry diplomacy, right? Angry activism. So, which is okay to a certain extent, but what do we expect the youth in Qatar, for instance? What kind of activism we expect from them? And please, Reem, if you want to expand on this based on our conversations. I know you devote a lot of time and energy in this area. So as a Qatari youth, what would you say? I mean, like, how would your contribution be on that regard?
Thank you, Professor, for that brief introduction. I was actually just putting together, I'm trying to formulate a question that is multifaceted, and I felt like I needed a minute to put some of my thoughts together. But I think specifically with that point, it does not reflect our culture and our Islamic beliefs of activism. It is not this form of anger. It is not this form of blame. But we are here to look for answers. And I think this is where the question of the Mizan comes in. Like the doctor mentioned, there have been numerous previous policies that came into place. There have been numerous legislations. There have been, I mean, it's countless. What we have tried so far to put on the table to try to change the status quo. But clearly, we have not achieved that yet. And I think when it comes to the Islamic approach, which is not only for Muslims, as we have said, it is a global approach for all human beings. How we label it is not the point here. But what this approach offers is something that comes before all of these policies that we are trying to put into place. And maybe if we have this foundation first, we will be able to make use of everything that has come after, that we have already worked on. Now, looking at the Islamic perspective, looking at Al-Mizan, how can we adopt or implement Al-Mizan where it does not turn into all the other policies that we have tried to put into place, where it does not turn into trying to change the numbers and trying to be satisfied with that. That's clearly not gotten enough anywhere. And I think this goes back to the ayah that the doctor mentioned. What are we going back to? What are we trying to get back to? And again, if we are going to talk about our experience here in Qatar, we're looking at, or the environmental movement has demonized natural gas, has demonized fossil fuels, has demonized oil, but for someone coming from this part of the world where we know our livelihood depends on I'm forced to look at it differently. I'm forced to look at it as this is part of nature. This is part of the land, Allah and So this is part of the blessings that God has provided to us, like everything else in nature. So what is it that we need to fix? What's it that we need to go back to? We had this blessing 200 years ago. How would our ancestors have used it that is differently than the way we are using it today, the way we are seeing it today? How could we go back and look at how humans fit into nature and use that today with the resources that we have today? How can we start using Mizan? How can we start implementing Mizan to go back to that way of thinking and that way of looking at the world that goes beyond the numbers, beyond changing the numbers, beyond activities or actions that are temporary?
Thank you, Reem. Yeah. This problem is created by us. Therefore, sometimes many of us we still don't accept it as a problem. There's a climate deniers. So when I was attending that conference before COVID-19 in New York City at in school, and in the lunchtime they said there is a demonstration against Mr. Trump policy, climate policy. At Times Square, we demonstrated, we say we believe in scientific evidence, we believe there is a climate. So it is America. So, on my part, I am teaching, I designed a course on critical thinking at Üsküdar University, and let students to think for themselves, come up with new solutions, particularly to live in the future. We need your feedbacks, we need your new visions. We come up, you see, and each day we are a lot of new ideas, a lot of new studies, and Alhamdulillah, so far many students with PhD and MA with me, they come up with a lot of materials. They will take time, but it gives me hope. It gives me hope. Can find a solution. We have to be hopeful, and we have to be self-confident ourselves and for culture and for legacy. Just look at your country when you look at the map. And I was in America, sometimes they where are you from? I said from 2030. They were laughing. They are. And this is why we changed our name now to Turkey. But they just remember an animal. They even don't heard of Turkey. But now Mustafa is heard in the world for obvious reasons, not only for energy policy, but a lot of things. Okay.
Thank you very much. This is a beautiful question, and I would love to get into debate and discussions to go deeper into it. 3 points. First of all, we did not come to Qatar to present that. We came to Qatar to present the after action of Mizan. Mizan is a document, as I said, that has been translated to 6 languages, and I hope it will be translated to all languages. And the translation is being done on voluntary basis. So the minute we said we're doing this at Mizan, and a lot of organizations said we will do the translation. This is huge. So it's the inspiration that it brought about. So this is one thing. The other thing, as I said, we came here to discuss the actions afterward at Mizan, and I presented very briefly yesterday some of the innovative thinking that has been put into it, which is creating the public movement, the award, the decade of action, and the academy, and so on and so forth. So this is putting it into implementation. Of course, also I said it's the Mizan document is just scratching the surface. Okay, it's just putting the seed, and we hope the forest will run. And I'm jealous of Laudato Si. By the way, Laudato Si, it means praise to God in Italian, which is Alhamdulillah or Subhanallah. Okay, and it does not say it is a Catholic movement towards humanity. As we have avoided that, we're saying Al-Mizan, a covenant for the earth. Al-Mizan is an Arabic word, a covenant, we not say an Islamic covenant for them. So it is for humanity. Now, what do we need to change and where do we want to go? You mentioned very rightly that we needed development in the past 200 years. We, even Nobel Peace Prizes and prizes and so on, were given to the inventors of electricity, the inventors of trains and carbon-based cars and so on, because we needed that at that time, right? And we didn't know what we know now. Now, and I don't apologize for my generation or my fathers and grandfathers' generations for what have they done, because they have contributed to development. What I would apologize for is not taking action now, because we know better. We know that these actions will take us to a gloomy and dark future if we do not take action. We are the generation, because we didn't know what our ancestors did. Al-Ahramat, who built them, there are conspiracies that there were, more advanced technologies than we know. But we are the most advanced technology, for God's sake. We have artificial intelligence, we have Internet of Things, we have so many things. But we have tried technology, and we will continue using technology. Somebody mentioned, probably yourself, sir, mentioned the carbon sequestration efforts by Qatar. This is technology to solve some of the solutions. We use policies. Some of them have been implemented and have led to better, livelihoods and so on. But we have not tried the value system, the ethics, the moral principles. And this is what we need to go back to. The roots, the basis of our existence, which is our value system and what we live by and what drives our behaviors and so on. So through Al-Mizan movement, we hope to change the behavior of the people and their understanding and their response and their belief that they are not the center of the universe. They are part, small, tiny part of the universe. Each individual, although small, tiny part, has a responsibility. And actions of individuals will contribute either to a positive future or to the Stone Ages, right? And mentioning the Stone Ages, Antonio Guterres said, did not go out of the Stone Age because we did not have any more stones, but because of new knowledge that we have. So we will not end up being, the generation of oil and gas, because we will run out of oil and gas, or we will stop pumping oil and gas, but because there are other alternatives, more clean and more green and so on. So even when we talk with member states, and especially Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all oil producing countries, we're not saying stop pumping immediately, because we know that will impact their livelihoods. Their economies are based on 95% of the Saudi economy is based on oil. So how can you destroy a state or a country because it should be green? But we're saying move, transform into a greener economy, diversify your economy. The deserts of Saudi Arabia can light the entire globe by using solar systems. So this is another richness that God bestowed on this land, right? So there are these other things, technology, policies, and behavioral change are very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. Dr. Ode, Dr. Brother Ahmed.
I think Dr. Iyad or Dr. Ibrahim already mentioned. I think Hamad Zaki Yamani would he had this quote. Ahmed Zaki Yamani said, "The Stone Age
did not end because we ran out of stones. Maybe it's another. Yeah, but I believe. I mean, how do we want to conceptualize Mizan? Is it a tool, a method, a process, a methodology, or a worldview? So a Mizan can be a spectrum of things. I mean, from a tool to a mindset to a culture to a worldview. I believe we are struggling with the idea of how can we transform or make a shift in terms of a sustainable future. I believe, I mean, there are many approaches. People talk about planetary boundaries. People talk about the donut economy, that there are some limits. And also we talk about what we call a mission economy. I mean, a mission economy that you need to have a policy that will be transformative, and it will move that the role of government is not only to fix market failure. The role of government is to set direction. And we can see when in the early 60s, during the Kennedy administration in the US, when they were able to land man on the moon, the outcome of this transformative mission, it created a lot of nanotechnology, solar energy, all sorts of integrated circuits, transistors. So having a sectoral approach to sustainability is crucial. I mean, there are arguments. I mean, when we need to make a distinction. قالت العرب أمنا قل تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا لا تقولوا راعنا وقولوا انظرنا. The idea is we need to make distinction of terminology. There is a distinction between growth versus development. Growth is making things bigger. Cancer is growth, but development is to make things better. So we need to make a distinction between growth for the sake of growth. It's risky. So we need to redefine terminology, and it's a wicked problem. I agree with you. It's in policy what we call wicked problems. That we need to do some taming for this problem. I think the idea of what we call shuhud al-hadari, civilizational to be witnessed. We have a moral responsibility. We're just only consumers in Qatar or Doha or Jordan or Lebanon or Turkey. We have a moral responsibility to the planet, and I think we need to think of this global leadership, global moral leadership. That it's about trusteeship, amana. It's all about imran and construction of the earth, and rahma lil alamin, mercy for humanity. Lil alamin means for every living or non-living species. This mandate it's beyond nation states, beyond a MENA region or GCC or OECD. It's more of humanitarian, rahma lil alamin. So the mandate is about mercy for humanity, and we need to be mindful of our global leadership and global responsibility.
I need to take you for different. We are talking about actions. We are talking about activities. We are talking about solutions. Yes, Mizan exists in the policies, exists in the United Nations, exists everywhere, exists in the CIS, exists. But how can we convert it into a real action, a real solution? This is what we need to do exactly with Mizan. If we need to think about the global initiatives like UN, for example, I'm sitting beside the UN right now. So United Nations declared the 10 years of the ecosystem restorations from 2001 to 2030. All the countries, all the Arabic countries committed to do ecosystem restoration right now by force, okay? Or obligatory, or they want to enhance. At the end of the day, something will happen during the 10 years. Saudi Arabia right now declared the initiative Green Saudi. Right now, we are talking about 3 million trees will be planted here, 1 million trees will be planted there. This is why we need now to take the opportunity to not only ecosystem restoration, but ecosystem restoration based on Islamic principles. Okay. When we talk about, for example, from the ecosystem, I'm talking about ecosystem restoration as an example right now. If you talk about the guidelines, all the guidelines talk about the forests. Nothing talk about the arid. Nothing talk about the arid. It's a kind of monopoly. This is احتكار. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم said من احتكر فهو خاطئ. Who is monopolized is wrong. This is from our religion. Who is monopolized is wrong. Even the policies right now is a kind of mobilization. Okay, we didn't have. That's right. Yeah, we didn't have in our country. There is no policy. I'm working in ecosystem restoration since 18 years, 19 years right now, but there is no clear policy for ecosystem restoration by the Arabic region in the United Nations. All of them talking about forests, that about wetlands, but when it takes to the arid, they take a step back. So we need to take this opportunity, Mizan, during this 10 years of the restoration, to take the opportunity. Yes, we are resistant. This is my
Thank you so much, dear guests, dear participants. It's the end of the session, but also it's a new beginning, right? So thank you so much to our colleagues who flight to Qatar for this event, Dr. Odeh, Dr. Ibrahim, and Dr. Iyad. And we have other colleagues, as Dr. Iyad yesterday introduced in his presentation, who were in the core team, who were in the drafting team, and it's a growing community, it's a growing impact at Mizan, and it's about collaboration, it's about more joining forces. So we hope that this event was instrumental to make better connections, more integrations, since we all hope and wish for the same cause. So thanks again for everything, Ahmed, all partners, all speakers, and all participants. And special thanks to Bayan. She did wonderful work. And in both days, you have seen a colleague who has been continuously typing on the back corner, Nur Hamwi. He's going to be creating the report, right? So it's the responsibility of Mizan. So we'll work together, of course. We don't put everything on our colleagues. So once again, to the end, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, group photo, yes.
Thank you everyone online for joining us, and we'll see you in future events, inshallah. If you want to keep up with our events, do follow us on our Instagram page @MakeHerVersus. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you very much.
Please, if you would like to be part of